Okay. Good evening, everyone. I would like to call this August 9th, 2022 review session to order. Seeing that Treasurer Abraha is not here, we would need to appoint a Treasurer Pro Tem for the meeting. I would like to motion that we appoint Board Member Deion Sampson as our Treasurer Pro Tem. Do I have a second? Second. It has been seconded. May we have a vote?
You want me to do the vote? I ain't been voted yet.
You can do it though.
All right. President Smith,
Yes.
Vice President Reiner,
Yes.
Board Member Sampson, yes. Board Member Dr. Pickett,
Yes.
Board Member Witt Gagne,
Yes.
Board Member Dr. Goodwine. Board Member Lacy.
Lacy is not here.
All right, 6 yes.
6 yeses, so Board Member Sampson is our Treasurer Pro Tem for the meeting. Now may we have a roll call?
President Smith,
Present.
Vice President Reiner,
Present.
Board Member Sampson, present. Board Member Dr. Pickett,
Present.
Board Member Witt Gagne,
Present.
Board Member Dr. Goodwine. And Board Member Lacy, excused absence.
Yes,
6
sir.
present, sir.
Thank you, sir. May we rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? All right, good evening, everyone. I'll take a moment while people are getting seated. It's good to be here. Before we get to your recommendations, Dr. Lally, I would just like to say something for a brief moment, if I may. There have been some things that have been out about this board, and I do want to say that as board members, it is our duty and is our right, and it also helps us out at times to have disagreements, to have differences of thought, differences of opinion. I accept that and I appreciate that, but I also want to say that this board also acts in a way to move this district forward. This board is trying to move this district forward, and we do not want to do anything that enters into the realm of politics in front of these children, and that's what we are trying to do. This board also has nothing to hide with how we are moving things, and also I want to remind us as board members, as we disagree, as we often have, once there has been a vote, we have the right to say our disagreements as we are coming on that vote, but afterwards, it is in our code of ethics that we move with the majority after those votes have been calculated. So I just wanted to center us on this work. This is the last time we will be meeting before a new school year starts. Also wanting to make sure that as we are here, we treat our staff and our employees with respect, as well as with each other. So we do not want to be in more meetings downing staff, downing each other. We know that everybody here is working towards the betterment of this district, and we want to change things in a positive role. Everyone here has seen things that they have worked to try to change. We appreciate all the things that come forward as we move forward for those changes, and we just want to make sure that as a board, we are working together for our children as we move forward into this school year. With that, Dr. Lally, can we have your recommendations, please?
The first recommendation is for review and for a vote this evening. It is the Human Resources agenda, and I would ask that Mr. Harmon, you give us some highlights of what the board is actually looking at.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you for the opportunity, as always. So there are a number of items on the agenda. And if you recall, at last board meeting, I had kind of given the heads up to the board that I would be asking for a vote at this review session due to the staffing needs that we're trying to address as we start the school year. I had the pleasure to share earlier in a policy meeting that we had a a second day of new teacher orientation, new staff orientation. Our first one was a week ago, which had about 200 and I forget so many, 210, 220 folks at it. But this today, and Dr. Lawley actually got a chance to join us as well. We had an additional 80, I think it was 84 staff at new staff orientation as well. So that's the reason that I'm asking that you hire today rather than a week from now, so that we can get school started with the individuals that are on the agenda. That being said, there's some wonderful things to point out to you. Some change of contracts where folks, a number of examples where paraprofessionals have now moved into the teaching ranks, and so that was something I thought was really worth highlighting, and we're excited about, and the opportunity to share that. A number of changes of contract as people have moved into higher level positions where they might have been in a temporary position, but now they've tested into and passed the test and have a higher opportunity to earn and contribute for the district. Also, obviously, a lot of new hires of new staff new to the district, as well as some folks that are returning to the district, rehires. And then, of course, at the end of the list, you have the typical supplemental, long list of supplementals. But we're excited to bring back a number of long-term substitutes that are in the rehire list as well. And again, our hope is to continue to get those folks to work through their licensure. Some of them did this past year, and that's worth pointing out. A number of long-terms last year some of them are now fully licensed teachers, and that was, for me, I count that as a success, that those folks have both gone through that process and have continued to stay with us. Our hope is that we'll be able to continue to support this next group of long-term subs in that same way, that they can join us in a long-term capacity as well. I think that's kind of the major points that I'd like to point out to you. Questions?
I'd like to point out that David Romick has turned in his retirement. He will be retiring as of, I believe it's August 22nd, and I would just like to thank him for all the work that he did for 30 years in this district, and all the work that he did as the DEA president during my tenure here as both the associate superintendent and the superintendent. He will be missed, and I just want to wish him well and congratulate him on his retirement.
Before we entertain any motions, are any questions from the board? Dr. Goodwin.
I asked this question last week about the difference of pay in long-term subs, and I believe the response was they all stay at step one. But I see several on here that have a difference of pay, and I'm trying to understand how those individuals have a difference of pay.
Yes, ma'am. I don't know if I'm on or not, the microphone's on or not, but so what we do in honoring long-term subs is that we take into account their education level. So a bachelor's step one is paid different, less than a master's step one or master's plus, I think it's 18. Yeah, so we do honor their education level, but they stay at step one as a long-term until they get fully licensed.
Can I just request a list of all of our substitutes and their qualifications? I just want to make sure we're equitable across the board, because I have received concerns from some individual, but if that is the process and we're following that consistently,
Sure.
I mean, that needs to be the response now. So if I could just request
Absolutely.
all the ones, just if you could just send that.
And if it's okay, if I could follow up with you to make sure I'm getting you
Absolutely.
exactly what you're asking for, we'd happy to do that.
Absolutely.
Mr. Sampson.
Thank you, Mr. President. In the same line, and this is just a thought looking at the things that are being requested to be voted on today. The first one is there a way we can do some research as it relates to long-term subs? First, let me say, I know we need them. I know we need them. I know there was some last year that were rock stars. But I do have a concern that a licensed teacher who comes into the district is making the same amount of pay as a long-term sub. So I would like to get some recommendations, because we talk a lot about retention. And one of those things that concerns me is that if I went to school and I did all of this to get this license, I'm coming in the door at the same amount as a long-term sub. That is concerning to me, and I just want to know if we can do some research, throw out some ideas of what we can do to retain more than losing quality staff to another district because of pay, if that makes sense.
Yes, sir.
All right. The second thing is, Mr. President, if I may,
Yes, sir.
thank you so much. I would like to pull number 20 and reserve the vote for that next week. I made a request for some information. I still haven't got all of the information. I have most of the information, but I would like to make a motion to pull number 20 for consideration next week.
So we could pull number 20, and then you would be making the motion to table that vote.
Yes, sir.
It has been moved and seconded. Any discussions on the motion? Yes, ma'am, Ms. Vice President.
Question will be for Chief Harmon and Superintendent. Are there any time considerations that would necessitate having number 20 passed today?
Dr. Burton, I would refer that to you.
Any other questions? If there are none, may we have a vote?
And this vote is to pull number 20?
No, we can already, it has
We're
already
already-
been pulled.
Okay.
You are now voting, your motion was to table
Got it.
20.
All right. President Smith,
Yes,
Vice President Reiner,
Yes.
Board Member Sampson, yes. Board Member Dr. Pickett? Yes. Board Member Whit Gagne?
Yes.
Board Member Dr. Goodwine?
Yes.
6 yeses.
6 yeses. Any other questions on HR? If there are none, I will entertain a motion to accept Superintendent's recommendation A. Been moved, do we have a second? It has been moved and
Second.
seconded. Do we have any questions on the motion? Seeing there are none, may we have a vote, please?
President Smith,
Yes.
Vice President Reiner,
Yes.
Board Member Sampson, yes. Board Member Dr. Pickett,
Yes.
Board Member Whit Gagne,
Yes.
Board Member Dr. Goodwine.
I abstained because my brother is on this list.
5 yeses,
And 1 abstention.
1 abstention.
The next item is Human Resources DEA after July 10th, and again, this would be a recommendation for approval.
Do we have any questions? If there are no questions, I move that we accept Superintendent's recommendation B.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded. Any questions on the motion? Seeing that there are none, may we have a vote?
President Smith,
No.
Vice President Reiner,
No.
Board Member Sampson, no. Board Member Dr. Pickett,
No.
Board Member Whit Gagne,
No.
Board Member Dr. Goodwine.
No.
6 noes.
Dr. Lally, your next recommendation, please.
Next recommendation are review of the contracts that are listed. They are there for the board to be able to look at, and we'll answer any questions that you might have.
Any questions as we review contracts? I'll give a moment for us to look over them. Yes, sir, Mr. Sampson.
Thank you, Mr. President. I do have a question about the new highlighted one. Can somebody explain to me what PBIS rewards? And I see a specific school, but if we're a PBIS district, is this something that's going to branch out to other schools? Or just tell me, why is it specifically Belmont High School?
PBIS is our PSC, and they are trying to have a presentation. So it's for from what I understand, it's for a consulting service, and that was just added today. They thought it had been put on, but it was put in incorrectly, so we put it on today. Ms. Kidd, you had some other conversation about that, is that correct? Yeah.
So when it says web-based use, program will be used to enhance the student affirming positive school climate, what does that mean?
I think it's their presentation is going to be online with a consultant.
Got
Is
it.
that what he indicated to you? It's training.
Training for a reward system that Belmont wants to use. It's an
Right.
application that they want to use for their students. And it's a training to be able to use that application.
It's professional development for them, yeah.
So Belmont is the only school that requested this, or is it something we're looking to do as a pilot to spread out around the rest of the district?
No, there is another school that's using it, so
Okay.
they use their, principal use their money to identify things like this that they think fit their context. So Belmont, Mrs. Ducati has decided that she thinks that this would work well at Belmont. There's, I think Wright Brothers uses it too. There are only 2 schools that are using this current specific application.
Got it. Thank you so much. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Dr. Lally, if I may, no, I will go down
No,
to Dr.
go ahead.
Goodwin first.
Go
Oh,
ahead.
well, thank you, Dr. Goodwin. Can you give us some more information around this Heartland payment system?
The Heartland payment system are the cash registers, I believe, for the Welcome Stadium, for them in the concession stand.
Okay, and with that, what do we have in place around the training of our individuals that will be operating these?
I can't answer that, but I'll get back to the board on that for next week.
Okay, I appreciate that. Dr. Goodwin?
I'm gonna follow up first on that question. Will the doors at Welcome Stadium now take credit card payments, or are they still cash only?
I'll follow up on that too, because I don't know for sure.
Okay, second, I had a question based on something you said, Dr. Burton. The principals, you said they have their funding. Do principals have allowances or building funds that are specified for principal use?
Yes.
How much are their funds?
I think the treasurer would have to answer that for you for each building, how much
Okay.
they have in their principal fund.
Can I, if you don't have it right now, but if you have it, then you can.
I can get with you. For supplies, we have $1 million out of the general fund. And then there's Fund 18, that's the principal's fund. And I provided information to the treasurer to provide it to the board. If you don't have it, I can provide it to you.
And is it a general pot, or is it split up by schools?
It's split up by schools. Like schools do a fundraiser and other activities, and they get the money, and then it's for each school how much they raise.
Okay, if I can have it broken down by schools, that would be great.
Sure, I can send
Okay.
it to you.
Yeah, and with that, I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, that is split is then based off the population enrollment in that school, correct?
It is based on enrollment.
Okay,
But the other principals fund, which is not this one, is their fundraising. So if a principal does a fundraiser, they have a principals fund that's reported every month that sits there with a balance in it as well. And those vary. The amounts in each of the individual principals funds are different based upon what they've done in their fundraising.
Okay, and with the fundraising, do you guys do a yearly training to go through the requirements for fundraising and how to do that? I know we have some new principals this year as well. Just how do they know about the fundraising, the process, and how to?
First of all,
work that
there are policies to follow through, but they work through the treasurer's office to make sure that they have the appropriate paperwork and all that. And I don't know if the treasurer's office does any training. I think it's mostly if they have a question, they go to their chief, and the chief sets up anything that they need to know.
And does that trickle down to our volunteer, or like our coaches who are not really a part of our buildings?
I
but they're-
believe Executive Director Jones does the coaches training on fundraisers, because I saw something come through last week.
Okay,
on
and if you
fundraising.
could just find out when they're
I will.
hosting those, I'd like to keep our people informed. But I do have a question on contracts. The bottom one for Gregory Taylor, that's the former IT
Correct.
director.
Mhm.
Are we filling IT right now?
Are we
Is there
filling?
is that position gonna be filled since
It's
he
going to
vacated?
be, it's going to be posted. This is for a contract for an RFP to be written. Last year, we paid $52,000 for an outside company, and it ended up being mostly internal work. So with him knowing our system, we can save about $26,000 by having him do that work, along with Terry Allen.
Is it a practice of us utilizing former employees so close to
Yes.
them leaving?
As a consultant, yes.
Okay. And the total contract, so everything we're paying him is 25,000.
For this RFP, it's 25,000.
Okay, and on that position, because I'm struggling with it because he's a former employee that left us for another full-time job. So it strikes me as a conflict so close to him leaving right now that's on there.
I don't believe that it is, because we've done that with other people that have left us, and his particular services will be given out to another company that will charge us twice as much money as he can do it for us for 25,000.
So this was a no-bid contract.
This is an RFP writing contract.
Is you said we did a company last year, so we didn't open it up for anyone else to submit to see if we could have got lower.
Last year, I believe that Ms. Allen did, that it was bid out, and it was, the final bid was $52,000 for them to write the RFP.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions on contracts? Vice President Reiner.
Thank you. I have a question, Superintendent. Can you give me some more information about the Hazel and Betty Ford Foundation for Bullying Prevention?
You'll remember that we had, there have been some changes in the law about bullying, and Dr. Burton and her team did an analysis of several that were available bullying organizations. And they did an analysis on all of them, and then came up with the recommendation for Alveus to be, in my other district called Alveus, to be used as our anti-bullying program. Dr. Burton, can you explain a few more of the pieces of it?
It's sponsored by the Betty Ford Foundation, and because she sponsors it, she assumes quite a bit of the costs and gives it to school districts at a significantly reduced cost. So as Dr. Lally mentioned, we looked at 3 programs, one of which there was an individual that presented to the board. We looked at that person's program. We looked at Oveus, and then we searched around the other districts to see what they were using, and we found that Oveus was the one that is used most often, had the best reviews. When I consulted other districts like Seattle, other districts here in the state of Ohio, and then when we looked at the discount that they would provide to us because they were part of the Betty Ford Foundation, they were well-known and more economical.
Thank you. Is it going to be in high school and middle school? Could you tell me what schools is it in and
All
what grades?
schools, all
Okay.
schools,
Oh,
all
great.
grades.
Okay, good. Thank you. Appreciate it.
And following up with that line of question, and I don't know if it's for Dr. Burton or for you, Dr. Lally. With that, what kind of work could they also be doing at the international school and those kind of pieces? And then also then our EL kids that won't be at the international school. Is there a piece that goes in some of that, knowing that we've had some issues in the past? I know at Belmont there was an issue with a lot of bullying between different ethnicities. We had a situation where, you know, a child was chased home. Is there any work inside of this to tackle some of that?
So, it just doesn't work. I'll use my teacher voice. So I don't have the specifics of all of the programs. I do know that they cover all age groups. They look at bullying of all types. So it's not that they're isolated to a certain type of bullying. The goal is that every person feels safe in their environment, no matter what your gender preference, your gender, your race, your creed, whatever that, your religious beliefs, but that you feel safe no matter who you are in a school district. So that's another reason why we chose this program rather than some of the others.
And it's a teacher-based program. The teachers work with the classrooms and with students.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Dr. Lawley. Thank you, Dr. Burton. Board Member Sampson.
In the same line of this bullying prevention program, if it's, Dr. Lawley answered my first question. So it's a teacher-based program. How is it being monitored to make sure it's being done with fidelity? Are there benchmarks? Is there a report card that a school will get? How is this being monitored to make sure that the investment that we are investing in this program, which I believe is needed, how are we going to know that every school is doing it with fidelity?
So there are fidelity checks for implementation. The other thing you'll look at is the baseline data for bullying, and then you implement the program, you do the fidelity checks to make sure that it's being implemented with fidelity, and then you look at bullying, incidents of bullying after the program.
And is this, the last question for me with this, is this principal monitored? Is it a team teacher, a lead teacher? Is it the PBI? Who monitors this implementation per building?
So the PSC coaches will be monitoring the implementation of every building because we have a coach assigned to every building. They'll be assisting the principals in the implementation and the monitoring.
Okay. Thank you so much. Thank you, Mr. President.
Dr. Goodwin.
In the concession TV, that contract right there, do we have policies on board that is the vetting process for the advertisement that will go out?
Beat me to it.
Yeah, I mean, I read it, so.
I'll check and see if we have policies for that. But we've used concession TV previous school year, and I'll double check and make sure. And as far as the cash register, the athletic directors did training with the site coordinators, and they'll conduct some more for personnel who didn't attend that training. And they do have credit readers at the high school and middle school gates and cash registers at high school concession stands only, because middle school doesn't have concessions.
We
So,
don't have them do we have them at Welcome Stadium?
yeah, Welcome Stadium is where the cash registers are.
Okay, at
So-
the door, that's all I'm making sure, at the
I'll
door.
I'll check
I've
that.
gone up there
So
several times. and
hopefully
I'm
she'll text me
sure.
the answer at the door.
Okay.
Any other questions on contracts? If there are none, your next recommendation, please, Dr. Lally.
Next recommendation is for approval of the mechanics, there's an approval of an OPSI contract on here for Mechanics Local 156.
Any questions? If none, your next recommendation, Dr. Lally?
Okay, my next resolution is the board will be asked to vote on schools that are impractical to transport. These schools may be charter schools that have 6 students. They may be charter schools that have 30 or less students. There will be 6 of these on the agenda for you to vote on. They have been notified that it's impractical for us to transport. They have the right to appeal to the Ohio Department of Ed. And while the appeal's in process, we do have to transport them, but it is impractical to transport these 6 as determined by a transportation team. Dr. Burton?
So now we're down to 4 because
We're
the
down to
charter
4.
enrollment has increased, and so they have more students. But we have 4, either 4 or 5, that will be asking you to board as impractical to transport.
Any questions? Will we have, you said will we get this list before next Tuesday?
You'll have the list of the students. We'll get it to Sharice by Friday, so that you'll have it on Friday. You'll see who the students are and what the schools are, because you need to see the actual names of the students.
Yeah, appreciate you. Any other questions? If not, your next recommendation, Dr. Lally.
Before I do that, yes, the cash register, yes, you can take credit card at the high school and
Thank
middle
you.
school Welcome Stadium.
Y'all just don't know how good it feels to be in
Doors.
2022.
I love text. I can get the answers I need, so. The next one is approval of bus stops. This is required by law. You approve it every year. And I will provide a disclaimer. Our drivers have driven their routes, and things have been adjusted twice now. And there may still be, after they drive them again with kids actually at the stops, there still may be some stops that need to be adjusted. But what you're approving is basically the stops that have been designed so far. And it's just a requirement by law that you see the stops and that you approve the stops.
Any questions?
It needs to be at the next meeting.
Your next recommendation, Dr. Lally?
The next recommendation is a TIF agreement with the Delco Corporation. We approved this back in February or May, and there was a mistake in it. It didn't say at least $2 million. So they've asked us to reapprove it, and based on that, they're still giving us, they still have the TIF arrangement with the city and what we voted on, but they're also giving us $5,000 a year for 15 years for a CTE pathway, and we talked to them about paying for driver's license, or driver's training, excuse me, not driver's license, but driver's training for students in our pathways that require students to have to drive, like our fire program, our police program, and our automotive program. And then after, if we don't have a need for that, then we would determine what other CTE program might need that money for something. So that is their compensation agreement. And then 10% discount to all school district information on room bookings at the AC Hotel whenever we have consultants who come into the district and stay overnight. So there's a 10% discount that they also did. So those things are still in place. It's just a change of those two words that at least meets or exceeds $2 million.
Any questions? I see none. Your next recommendation, Dr. Lally.
Sorry, my computer's a little touchy today. There we go. Next recommendation is a memorandum of understanding. This is something that academic coordinator Worley has put in place with our PTOs. It is a gun safety, gun violence program at the middle school and high school levels to just make students aware of gun safety and potential things that could happen whenever guns are not used appropriately in their homes. So this is a memorandum of understanding with this corporation, and then it's also a $3,000 total charge for the district to offer these opportunities to our students.
Any questions? Now, Dr. Lally, one, I do want to say I appreciate the work that Ms. Worley is doing. She's really getting out. You see a lot of the things online. I would encourage anybody to follow her parent engagement page that she does a lot of great work on for the district. There's a lot of good things on there. With this, Dr. Lally, could you give me kind of like the timeline of kind of how this would go, and then how would we be getting this out to our students in the buildings?
There are a couple of presentations that are scheduled. One of the presentations will be live at, for example, Thurgood, and it will be broadcast to the other high schools. Same thing with middle school. It will be live at one middle school and broadcast to the other middle schools. There's a presentation in the fall, presentation in the spring, to have those conversations with students.
Appreciate that. Any
And
other questions?
and excuse me, student council will, the student council will actually have part of that. First, it's a presentation. The second one is a panel discussion that would be broadcast. The third one is student council running a panel that would broadcast.
Appreciate that. Appreciate that. Dr. Goodwin.
Yes, it was more so about, what's her title? Academic coordinator, Worley? Is that her title?
I'm sorry,
What's Ms. Worley's title?
academic coordinator,
Okay. yeah.
outreach.
My question, outreach. Okay, yes. My question more so is, do we have any plans to get her some assistance? Because she is everywhere right now. And if there were two of her or someone working with her, it just seems like she can continue to, I mean, she's everywhere. I see her in multiple communities. I see her sending out multiple events that I don't even know about and things. But it just seems like she's doing such a good job. Maybe it's time to start thinking about adding to her team to continue the work that
Yeah,
they're doing.
can we consider that for next year's budget?
You tell us what you need. That's what we're here for.
Yeah.
Any other questions? If there are none, your next recommendation, Dr. Lally.
The next recommendation will be something that we thought was approved back in the spring, and somehow it was not. we talked about, and I think you might remember this, we talked about trying to increase substitute bus drivers' rate of pay, $16 an hour for a substitute bus trainee, from $12 to $16, and a substitute bus driver from $14 to $18. And somewhere along the line after that discussion, it did not get on the agenda. So putting it on the agenda so it will be voted on for this increase in their pay.
Any questions? I'll go to Dr. Goodwin.
Yeah. First, I just want to say, I can't believe we didn't already do this. I rode a bus with people and they do a lot of work. So I'm happy that it is now on the agenda to move to that next step because we should have already done it. So thank you for bringing it forward and noticing that it hadn't been done already.
Mr. Sampson.
Thank you, Mr. President. Two things for me. So the substitute bus trainees and the substitute bus drivers who have already, would this be retro to
June
them?
1st.
June 1st, got it. The second one is, the only question I have, why is this a temporary salary scale? Why can't we just make this a permanent salary scale?
It will be once you vote on it. It'll be permanent.
Okay, it just says resolution temporary salary scale.
Yeah, I'm not sure why temporary was put on there. Dave, do you know why?
I don't, but I think it might be regarding the fact that they're substitute employees because the goal is to move them from substitute to regular full-time employees.
Got it.
It's because our goal is not to have you be a substitute bus trainee forever. We want to move you, get you hired.
Got it. Okay, okay. All right, thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Sampson. Any other questions? There are none. Your next recommendation, Dr. Lowry.
The next resolution will be to request that we raise the salary of our substitute teachers and our substitute paraprofessionals who we hire through ESS. And that resolution is there for you. We did a study of surrounding districts, and the majority of them are anywhere between 120, and some of them are even higher than that. So what we want to try and do is to compete and be able to hire substitute teachers at a rate of 125 and substitute parapros at $95.70 per day. And the billing rate, of course, would include the amount listed there for ESS for their portion of the finding those people to hire for us.
Okay. Any questions?
I'll just go since you're doing math over there. What's the pay difference between, again, the temporary subs through the ESS program and our long-term subs now?
Oh, well, sorry. Temporary subs are, as you see there, they're 125. It was 112.50. So each of those positions went up by 10%. But so 125 versus the daily rate of whatever their education level is, with bachelor's step 1 or master's step 1. A bachelor's step 1 is ballpark of $300 something.
Yeah, it's $48,000 a year.
Yeah.
For a 178-day contract.
But there's a significant difference in the work too. I mean, they're making a long-term is making a commitment to that single position. They're becoming essentially a regular staff member.
Let me back up. You said if a person did through the ESS, they would make $48,000 a year?
No. Sorry. ESS folks make $125 a day.
Yeah, let's just say this is their job. Most people go into it.
Let me very quickly.
I just want to know what the difference was if I was a substitute every day at multiple schools versus if I committed to a long-term at one school.
If you worked, the teacher calendar is 200 days. If you worked,
under the new rate, not the old.
Right. If you did all 200 days, maybe same building or bounced around buildings, whatever it might be, at $125 a day, that's $25,000. That's what the employee would receive. There's a bill rate that's a little higher than that ESS is charging us to get those folks.
Do we have any strategies to convert some of these day subs into longer term subs to be with us a little bit longer and become a part of our building cultures?
We have done so, and we just have some rules that we have to follow in working with ESS as our partner, so that we're not, essentially stealing their employees. But there's some notification we have to give them that, at X point number of days out, we intend to hire this person. So that does happen already.
Final question for you. Does ESS accept the high school diploma, or are they at the bachelor standard that we have for our long-term?
The ESS, as a national company, does allow that. We do not allow that with ESS. We expect that you have to have a degree of some kind. So to be an ESS employee who works in Dayton because they supply subs to other school districts in the area, as well as inside the state and outside the state. But in Dayton, you must have, ESS employees must have a degree, could be a business degree, could be whatever. But we do not allow only high school graduates to be our substitutes.
Thank you.
Mr. Sampson.
Thank you, Mr. President. I should have asked this under HR, but you brought it up, so we're still talking about subs. What is the district's responsibility of notifying? We have a lot of long-term subs. What responsibility do we have to families about notifying them about the different subs in the building? Like, is there a notification that has to go out under like one of Title I or something like that?
There is no longer a requirement to state that I'm aware of that we do that notification, but I mean, that's part of the public notice of what we're doing in a board meeting is seeing who's being hired as well. Yeah, there's no such thing as a highly qualified, HQT, you probably heard of HQT, highly qualified teacher. That doesn't exist anymore for anyone.
So let me ask this question. Is there a way that even though it's not required for the state, is there a way that we can, because I think we owe it to our parents to know that their child is not being taught by a licensed teacher?
Oh, no, they are licensed teachers.
The long-term subs are
The
licensed
long-term
teachers?
subs are licensed
They
teachers,
get
yes, sir.
licensed through the state. Yep.
Yes,
It's not a full-time license, like a teacher's license.
Yes.
It's a temporary license, but it is an educational license.
yeah,
Yes.
some of them do have full-time, they don't have a temporary in some cases. They actually have a teaching license.
Some.
Okay, I'll
Some do.
reserve
You
my
wanna-
questions for later. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
We don't hire unlicensed, long-term subs in the district.
Ms. Dr. Goodwin.
That's correct. Put the doctor on that. Do we have any plans to start an internal training program for our substitute teachers? Because although they get a license through the state of Ohio, they're not licensed teachers who have gone through the academic training, but they're serving here. And this is, I believe, our second or third year of bringing back district long-term subs. So is there a plan to start a internal, like, training program to help them better adjust to the teacher lifestyle?
So this is a change this year from last year, when last year the long-term sub concept was a new thing here. There was different versions of that in previous years, but what we currently do was kind of new last year. This year, we included all the long-term substitutes as if they are regular staff employees. They've been through the new teacher orientation, which was 3-4 days with curriculum. And they'll continue to get professional development at the building level, just like any other classroom teacher would. Can we do more? There's always more. But I will also say specifically, OEC has worked with the folks who are going to be intervention specialists. Sorry, and because that we had heard that as well last year. Is being an intervention specialist is particularly difficult, and the challenges that come with that. So we've with Dr. Burton and her team have done additional training, and I know there'll be further ongoing training as well with those folks as well on how to best serve students on an individual education plan.
Thank you. It feels good to hear that you guys are like looking forward and you are investing back into these individuals. That is great. One more question for you. Our long-term subs, are they eligible for professional development if they're trying to get their teaching license? Or is this something they have to do out of pocket themselves?
They all participate in the professional development that's required. Like next week, we have PD.
No, not that far.
I'm
But
sorry.
If I'm going to take the next steps to try to become a teacher, do they get reimbursement? Are they
No.
eligible for that?
No, you have to be in the district. You have to be employed in the district for at least, I believe it's a year before you even get reimbursed for additional credits yourself.
Okay, so at this point, the people who were here last year have met that year requirement. Are they eligible?
If they're full-time employees. If they're a long-term sub, they do not.
Okay. That may just be something we want to look at later down the line, because we're asking them to make like a $10,000 to $20,000 commitment to go and get additional education, but not helping them with that. So I know we've grown a little bit, but that's just another way to help them become teachers.
No. All right, you have another
I'm done.
question?
I'm done.
Appreciate you, Dr. Goodwin. With this addendum to the ESS contract, with the pay rate going to 125 per day, for other districts around us, where would that put us? Are other districts paying higher, most pay low, around the same? Where does that kind of seat us now?
Dr. Lally spoke a little bit about that, but it puts us right at, not at the very top, but it, the research that we did, we're in the 120s, 125s. There are some districts that pay as much as 140 that I'm aware of, but the most are in the 120 range, 120, 125. So we feel like 125 is where we needed to be competitive and to get folks to be here and stay here and invest here.
And then, how successful would you say has it been using ESS to fill our subs, our sub needs?
I shared with Dr. Lally, and she can pass that along to you if she wishes to do so. Each year, ESS provides me a end of the year report on their fill rate, and I will just say, substitute fill rates across the state, ESS or otherwise, districts that do it themselves, district that hire a company. Substitute rates are atrocious across the state of Ohio, but I can tell you off the top of my head, I do know the number that I was provided. This past year, our fill rate at ESS, or with ESS being our substitute provider, was about 46% of our absences got filled with a substitute. That is one of the reasons, and again, it depends on how the board looks at this, but I look at this as even with an increased cost, ultimately going to the employee, I look at this as a no new money initiative because of what the contract was for. Our fill rate is so far below what we could be paying based, if we had 80% or 90% or 100% fill rate, what we would be paying per day per sub would be significantly higher than what we are ultimately paying.
Appreciate you, sir. Any other questions? Dr. Goodwin.
Just following up on Board President Smith's question, can you guys look into if we did take on ourselves in the next year or two, filling our own sub for day rates? Because, if we're paying $171 right now for a company for that, I'm sure a lot more people would probably come work here for a day, but it's just something to, just future projecting on that part. Because I thought you guys were already at 125. So that's interesting to hear that you were lower than that.
This past year was 112.50.
In my sub days, I went with the highest paying person. So I imagine people who do sub work goes for who pays the highest, which I would pick West Carrollton over Dayton any day because they pay me more, but I would pick Dayton over Jefferson because you pay more than Jefferson. But it's a number game when you are in day work like this.
That's exactly why we do what we're asking you to do, absolutely.
Any other questions? Next recommendation, Dr. Lally.
Next recommendation is a resignation agreement with one of our employees. This is for a vote.
Any questions? I move that we accept Dr. Lally's recommendation K.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded. Are there any questions on the motion? Not. May we have a vote?
President Smith,
Yes.
Vice President Reiner,
Yes.
Board Member Sampson, yes. Board Member Dr. Pickett,
Yes.
Board Member Witt Gagne,
Yes.
Board Member Dr. Goodwine.
Yes.
6 yeses, Mr. President.
Next recommendation, please.
Next recommendation is a resolution to hire Frost Brown Todd as the district's attorney.
That is not on my thing.
I didn't see that on there.
That's not
And
on here.
refresh.
Refresh your screen.
Oh,
I was just thinking that too.
all right.
Are all screens refreshed? All right, I think all screens should be refreshed. Dr. Lally, you can keep going.
Keep
Did you
going.
have, oh, I thought you was,
No,
Oh, okay.
the information's in executive content.
okay. Appreciate that. Are there any questions? Mhm.
I do have one question.
Okay.
So this agreement, this August 8th agreement is replacing the engagement letter from 2 years ago?
It would be the new engagement letter, yes.
where in the last one, did they terminate? Because this says effective July 1st, so did they terminate the last one?
It automatically ended, I believe, on June 30th.
You might want to check that language, because it was not in there.
Okay,
Yeah. That's it. That's all I
Yeah.
had.
typically, we renew it every year before the fiscal year ends, so, but if you'll double check and make sure, thank you.
Any other questions? I see none. Your next recommendation, Dr. Lally.
The last one is a resolution for an MOU between the Dayton Foundation, Males of Color, and the Males of Color program. This would be an account. Dr. Worley has set up opportunities with the Dayton Foundation for donations for the scholarship funds that come in to be put at the Dayton Foundation so that they can hopefully multiply and draw interest. So this is the MOU for that.
Any questions? I want to say I appreciate the work that went into that. Do you have any other recommendations, Dr. Lally?
No, that concludes my review for tonight, Mr. President. Thank you.
Thank you. And do we have someone on hand to go over the treasurer's recommendations?
Yes, sir, I'm here.
Glad to have you, glad to have you.
Thank you.
You know,
Always-
we wish the best to our treasurer
Mr.
in her
President,
absence.
before we start that, could I ask a question? I don't see from last month's meeting, and maybe we can add it to next month's or next week's meeting, the MOU for neighborhood school centers. Yep. Thank you so much. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Sampson. We'll make sure we do have that added on. To our treasury recommendations.
Okay, thank you. Our first recommendation is approval of official certificate of estimated resources. The biggest change is in the permanent improvement fund, 1,545,869 in other sources. And there's some changes in the special revenue funds based on grants.
Any questions? I see there are none. Your next recommendation.
Second recommendation is approval of the permanent appropriation measure for fiscal year 2023. This appropriation measure is $17.4 million over the final appropriation measure for 2022. That's the increase just for the general fund. Other funds are about the same as the temporary measure.
Any questions? Next recommendation.
Thank you. Next recommendation is repay of temporary board advances. There was a board advance into Fund 599, Refugee School Improvement for $6,325. We got the grant money, so the money will be reverted back to the general fund.
Okay. Any questions? I see none. Next recommendation, please.
The next recommendation is for a transfer to the permanent improvement fund for $1.5 million. This is to cover the debt payments on the capital appreciation bonds we have.
Okay. And that's a yearly thing, right?
Yeah, it's an annual thing. We have two $10 million bonds outstanding.
Right. Okay. Any questions? There are none. Your next recommendation.
This is a placeholder for monthly financial statements. We have a finance committee meeting next Thursday, this Thursday to go over the financials.
Okay. Look forward to that presentation. Next recommendation, please.
The next recommendation is for tuition rates for 22-23 school year. Out of district K through 12th grade will be $3,381.60, and out of state will be $8,317.56.
Any questions? Next recommendation, please.
The next recommendation is for approval of donations. We have 4 donations ranging from $3,500 to $200, and donations are always appreciated.
Definitely appreciate it. Arch cutting tools, Valerie Elementary and Louis Troy, thank you. Ernst Concrete, Ruskin Elementary. Fidelity Investments at Bellhaven. And I think I saw Pure Ohio Wellness. It was a post online, wasn't it, Dr. Lally?
Yes, they donated, I believe it was 96 backpacks to the international school.
That's awesome. Definitely want to always thank those that donate to our district. It is much, much needed and greatly appreciated. Your next recommendation, sir.
The next recommendation is for approval of board minutes
Mhm.
for the month of July. For the July 13th, 19th, and 26th meetings.
Okay. Any questions? I see none. Your next recommendation, please.
The next recommendation is for approval of purchase requisitions.
Okay, I'll give the board a moment to go over the list, and if there's any questions that we want to ask now, I'll give a moment to look over them. Unless there are already questions that you are waiting to ask now. Mr. Sampson?
Thank you, Mr. President. Mine is on the 25 and less. Can you tell me about the graphic image? It says purchase service to recreate 29 school and athletic logos. What does that entail? And do we not have those resources in-house?
I'm going to ask that Ms. Kincaid come forward
All right.
to talk about why we had to do it that way.
Thank you so much.
Yes, we hired Graphic Image to recreate our school logos because we only have very low resolution logos for many schools. And so this is a very professional artist who can make the logos identical to what we already have, but give us that high resolution image and also give us the vector file. So if any changes need to be made in the future, we can make them in-house. That is why we went with them.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Dr. Lally.
Thank you, sir. Any other questions? Ms. Witt-Gagne?
Sorry, I just put my finger up. I know you thought I was done. My question is around the RTA and bus passes. I wondered of our presence of our DPS at the main hub downtown and what that will look like. I know we're paying RTA a pretty significant amount of money, and the hub can be an intimidating place, I think, and I wondered was there any room for our families and our children to have like a DPS space or hub within the hub in a way? I've just been thinking, I drive by the hub a lot, and I was like, I think about our kids going through there, and I just wondered about that.
Not all of the buses that our kids will be on will go through there, but the ones that do, there's going to be an SRO presence there for identifiable with the DPS stuff on it. So when we share that video with them, we can actually have principals announce to them that they need to hub close to the blue shirt SROs. Yeah, it's a good idea.
Thank you, Ms. Witt-Gagne. Any other questions? Mr. Sampson?
Thank you, Mr. President. Daybreak Runaway Shelter, what service does this provide for Daybreak?
Daybreak is the neglected programming that we have to do. So basically any dropout prevention, any staffing support services for students that are identified as neglected in that particular category. So that's what that service is out of that grant that we have. It's an annual contract.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Sampson. Dr. Lally, if you could kind of just briefly go through the reimbursement for the wireless hotspots.
The reimbursements for the hotspots up at the top.
Mm-hmm.
This is what we did with the federal funds that were received last year. We, for the Emergency Connectivity Fund from the federal government, we provided hotspots for students to use at home and paid the monthly rate for that. That was money that was fronted, if you will, by the treasurer, and this is paying back the general fund for that since we received the grant money.
Appreciate that. And then on the Montgomery County Juvenile Court contract, I know a while back we had some people from there come out and talk about kind of what they do for the district, the things that they see, some of their challenges that they talked about. Is there a way that we can schedule a follow-up presentation to them to talk to us about kind of where they are since then? What are some of the changes that they may have seen, some of the differences that what's going on, just kind of a follow-up with them, because I think that was a very interesting conversation, and it was very eye-opening as to all of the things that happened with Montgomery County Juvenile Court.
Yes, we can ask them to come out.
Thank you. Any other questions? Okay, if there are none, your next recommendation, sir.
Our last recommendation is for approval of then and now certificates. There are 3 then and nows for your approval.
Okay. Any questions? There are none. I do want to go back, sir, to the appropriate for when we talk about at the top when you talked about the appropriation. Now I know we, may have been a month, 2 months ago, where we created the temporary budget.
Yes, sir.
So would this be then finalizing the budget for the year?
This is the final. We always make changes throughout the year if on as-need basis, but this is the first permanent appropriation, so this is the final one.
Okay. That was the question I had. And then with being that briefly and not having to go through it, are there any departments that we could highlight that their appropriation got changed from when we talked about the temporary budget to what we're talking about now?
Most of the departments saw an increase. The biggest increase was for IT. If you give me 1 second, please.
Okay.
It's 2.8. Yeah,
That was with
they got an increase of, sorry about that. Okay, $2.1 million, and basically that's for, Greg Taylor had talked about having a Wi-Fi upgrade, so basically that's that money, $2.1 million for. That's the biggest increase we saw. Other department that saw, there's some increases to instruction, about $1 million added to instruction. That's in addition to what was requested, so that's additional appropriations between when the first budget was approved, temporary, and now.
Okay. Appreciate that. Are there any other questions about the budget? Dr. Goodwin?
Yes, so I asked this in our athletic council meeting. Did we ever locate a space for Stivers to get a weight room on their facility?
We're still waiting on the structural engineers.
Well, no, I'm just talking about a room for the equipment from the other building. Because my second question, because I see YMCA here, are we getting them passes to go work out somewhere?
The weight room situation, we have to wait on instructional engineers because of the space that's available.
Okay.
We have to make sure that it's safe, number one, if it'll work. The second is we're also waiting on a cost for our engineers to determine if we can actually do an add-on space for a weight room at Stivers. The pass is for, what you see on here is for.
That's for summer, so I'm looking forward here.
That's for neighborhood school
Our
centers.
next steps for them to be able to
We have
work
costs
out.
for both the YMCA and also for the
Croc Center?
Croc Center. But whenever, in speaking with Mr. Reisner, the site coordinator, there haven't been any coaches that have requested that yet. So we'll wait and see once we get back into full swing if there are. But we have already talked with both organizations and have the cost for that.
Okay, can our athletics team put out a communications to not only the coaches, but their parents? Because again, they have the second highest number of student athletes, and just making sure that they have access to that.
For students to go to weight room training, the coach has to go with them.
Okay. Okay,
That's
so just a communication now, just that it is available to them, because I know, I still haven't seen a communication that we're allowing coaches to coach multiple sports, but just those little things people may not know about.
The coach is the one who works with Mr. Reisner to request that. But I'll ask Executive Director to touch base with all the coaches and make sure they know that's an option again this year.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Mr. Sampson?
Mr. President, if I may, can we go back to then and now?
Yes, sir.
If it would be so kind of someone to coordinate a presentation from Dayton Children's Hospital about the student resiliency coordinators. I'm interested in the services that they provide, what they have seen. Do we need to, well, I know the answer to that one, but do we need to increase support the mental health services across the board? Do they have enough staff to provide the services that our students need? I'm interested in that. And then the second one is the YMCA additional cost for summer staffing. What is that?
They did not, they didn't turn in their information about their summer school ahead of the invoice.
Got it. Thank you so much.
So it's a neighborhood school center for Cleveland and for Edison. The Dayton Children's Hospital are being scheduled for September. And they do have a report to provide to the Board of Education. They are facing the same kinds of things as everyone else is, with a shortage of trained, qualified counselors and therapists, just like everyone around us are having this issue in the country right now. But we are staffed right now in the way that we ask to be staffed, but they can give us more information about needs. It would be really nice if we were able to, at some point in time, this is ESSER money that pays for this, but at some point in time, if we could increase our student behavior therapists, who are the short-term, on-the-spot counselors. Right now, they travel between buildings. So there are half the number of them as there are. Everybody has a resiliency coordinator, but the short-term behavior therapist, we only have, and that's by design because of the money that we have available. That's one per every 2 buildings. They have a small building, large building.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Does that conclude your recommendation, sir?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Appreciate you. Great job as always. Next, pursuant to section 121.22G2 of the Ohio Revised Code, I move that this board go into executive session. This meeting is being held to consider the appointment, employment, dismissal of a public employee. Do I have a second?
Second.
It's been moved in second. Any questions on the motion? May we have a vote?
President Smith,
Yes.
Vice President Reinert,
Yes.
Board Member Sampson, yes. Board Member Dr. Pickett.
Yes.
Board Member Witt Gagne.
Yes.
Board Member Dr. Goodwine.
Yes.
6 yeses, Mr. President.
We shall adjourn to the boardroom.
You're doing a great job back there. I just want you to know. He's new. I need to give him a shout out.